Hey, gang, springtime, yes. All roads leading to Parks Casino, the #1 casino experience in the state of Pennsylvania. The closest casino with live table games for the state of New Jersey. Parks Casino, this is how you win. They've got it all going on. It is my casino of choice. 3,200 state-of-the-art table game slots, and 115 live table games, plus beautiful poker room, state-of-the-art sports book, 150-foot video wall, reclining seats, and a whole collection of incredible award-winning restaurants, the Parks Grill Steakhouse, Liberty Bell Gastropub, the Beer Garden, you name it, they've got it, and a lot of great entertainment in the 1,500-seat Excite Center. Just announced Snooki and Joey, with their It's Happening podcast on June 28 plus, the Juicy Scoop Experience podcast live with Heather McDonald on October 4. Free parking. Visit parkscasino.com. This is how you win. Got to be 21. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Time now for Monday headlines from the Smerconish.com newsletter. Actually, initially, some shameless self-promotion. Asheville, North Carolina, Sunday, September 22, 2 p.m., 2024. Wow, that's a lot of twos. September 22, 2 p.m., 2024.
I like that.
Tomorrow at 10 a.m., the tickets go on sale. All my social media will have the link. Come and see me in Asheville in September. That was a song, I think. I'll see you in September. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Okay, obviously, the story of the week, although it's a pretty busy news week, there's a lot that's scheduled to take place, is the Trump trial. 18 New Yorkers selected to serve as jurors and alternates in the Manhattan criminal trial of former President Donald Trump. You remember, because I discussed this at length, how did we get down to the 18? It all began with a 42-question questionnaire, and included in the questionnaire, where do you get your news? And I find this so interesting because I want to know who are the channel changers on that group of jurors. And by the way, just, answer this to yourself. Imagine that you were part of the voir dire panel. You're a prospective Trump juror. Where do you get your news? Here are the choices. I'm going to answer as I go. BBC, yes. CNBC, yes. CNN, yes. Daily Mail, yes. Facebook, no. Fox News, yes. Google, yes. Google News. MSNBC, yes. Reuters, yes. New York Post, yes. New York Times, yes. New York One, no. TikTok, no. Truth Social, no. USA Today, yes. Wall Street Journal, yes. Washington Post, yes. WNYC, no. X, kinda. Everyone that I said yes and more, and TC has seen this, are all bookmarked in Safari on my laptop, and that's the foundation of where I go to select the headlines. I read them all, and that's where I go to make my determination as to what links will comprise each day's newsletter and website.
I think yours are like double that.
Charts.
I was going to say, I think yours are double that is what I'm going with that. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. But okay. By the way, were you counting up mine?
I was counting as I was actually doing my own, which I think is probably what people
What's
were
yours?
doing as they listen alone. I don't get it from Facebook. I don't do Fox. And you know what? I don't do MSNBC. It's interesting because I have to be honest. I don't do the local New York. So I don't do New York One or WNYC. Something I heard someone say online, which I think is really interesting, is that the New York Times for New Yorkers is more like a local paper. So can we?
Yeah, Ellie said that.
Oh, was it Ellie?
Ellie said that here. Ellie Honig said that to me on the program. That don't take that.
Okay.
It's not as if you're in Iowa.
Yes,
and you're reading the New York Times. It's the hometown newspaper.
Okay, to me, I thought that was very interesting because can you take from that they're more liberal, which is what sort of the general public thinks of the New York Times.
As a matter of fact, of the 18, the 12 and the 6. 13 of them, all but 5, checked the box for the New York Times.
I find that fascinating.
So I would have been off the charts. By the way, not bragging. It's my job. You know, I am not the IT software tech. I am not one of the two lawyers. I'm not the young woman living in Chelsea. This is what I do. But I find it really interesting to see who among these jurors has the most in terms of the news outlets that I've identified. And the top number that you will get is 5. In other words, 2 of the jurors said 4. 1 of the jurors said 5. 1 of the jurors said none. So juror number 1, who is the
unusual?
4-person, hails from Ireland. The 4-person is tasked with overseeing deliberations, now works in sales, is married, in his spare time enjoys anything outdoorsy. So juror number 1, the 4-person, said Daily Mail, Fox News, MSNBC, New York Times. That's the extent to which juror number 1 is a channel changer relative to these news sources. Another 4 was juror number 6. Juror number 6 recently graduated from college, lives in Chelsea. She works as a software engineer, likes to spend time with her friends and family, go to restaurants. So with regard to juror number 6, here it is: Facebook, Google, New York Times, and TikTok. Then there is juror number 7.
Facebook, Google, New York Times, and TikTok. That's fascinating.
Juror number 7 checks 5 boxes, lives on the Upper East Side, works as a civil litigator, told the court that he doesn't know much about criminal litigation, married with children, likes to spend time with them outdoors. So here comes juror number 7. I'm just running my finger down the column. New York Post, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, WNYC. And then there is juror number 4. Juror number 4, who has lived in the West Village for 15 years. He's a security engineer who enjoys wood and metalworking and comedy podcasts in his spare time. Now, this is really remarkable to me. Was on a jury for a criminal case previously, but does not remember if there was a verdict. How in the world do you sit on a criminal jury and not remember if there was a verdict? When asked by prosecutors at the end of jury selection if he'd have any concerns about returning a guilty verdict, he said no. He also said he did not really have strong feelings about the former president. So 5 is the most of any of them. 0, a Blutarsky, is the least that you get from any of them. The New York Times, as we referenced, is something regarded as a hometown newspaper. So here's a different way of me slicing the data. If I now look at the sources and see, well, which of these sources is preferred by the jurors, it's the New York Times. Google does pretty well. The New York Times was 13. Google was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, said Google. CNN, for comparison, 2. I'm sure all of the media outlets are like, please say us, say us. The Wall Street Journal, 4. So 4 of the jurors said the Wall Street Journal was something that they looked at for their news. The Washington Post had 1 vote, if you will. TikTok had 2. That's a little sign of the times, isn't it? Facebook had 2, and that's it. Yeah. So.
I think we're unusual. That's my takeaway. I mean, obviously, this is your job, and so you're doing this more than the average, more than even the excellent news follower. But I am astonished by how little some people follow.
There's a really great lesson in this because, those I think of us in this community, this POTUS community and my particular program, tend to be news junkies and make the mistake of thinking that everybody is as dialed in as we are. I mean, remember that the teacher on the jury who wasn't aware of the fact that Donald Trump is being prosecuted anywhere else.
How is that possible?
Which to me is pretty alarming. As alarming as the guy who sits on a jury and doesn't remember if there was a verdict.
Yes.
Okay. More headlines now from the Monday edition of the newsletter. Actually, let me catch up with some poll results. Friday, 24,303. Do you agree with those news organizations that have requested Biden and Trump publicly commit to participating in debates? And 52.12% said no. Come on, that had to be you looking at it not in the abstract of do they owe it to us to debate, but rather I imagine some of you are reading into this and thinking, this is pure speculation on my part, do I really want Joe Biden to have to commit to debating Donald Trump? And you're saying no, that you don't. I believe that if you're running for the highest office in the land, you've got an obligation, you've got a duty to put yourself out there publicly. We can have a separate conversation as to the value of the debates and as to whether they really are outcome determinative and whether instead we're all just looking for a gotcha moment. That's all valid, but I think they ought to debate. And these news outlets last week said, we want a commitment now. But of course, there's nothing that obligates the candidates to show up and debate, notwithstanding that the Commission on Presidential Debates has already established the 3 presidential, 1 vice presidential dates, as well as the locations. So there you go. Saturday, love this in terms of the volume, 44,034. Will Trump testify? And Donald Trump said as recently as last Friday, and he said the week before at Mar-a-Lago that he's going to testify. 80.43% of those who responded at Smerconish.com don't believe him and said he will not testify. As I have said previously here, and I said in a commentary on CNN on Saturday, it depends how the case comes in and whether his lawyers can elicit enough from Michael Cohen or Stormy Daniels. As I discussed with Ellie Honig, maybe they get it in inferentially, but they need to have his story told to a sufficient detail that they can make a closing argument on the following issue. And this is what is unfolding today in Manhattan. The prosecution believes and asserts that Donald Trump paid Stormy Daniels in the 11th hour of the campaign so as to not allow her to become a campaign issue. Hence, it was a campaign contribution, and it was in excess of the federal limits. That's their claim, among others, but that's their claim. And the Trump response is to say that any payment made to Stormy Daniels was made not with an eye toward the election, but to save his family and himself embarrassment. Well, how do you get that in unless Trump testifies? But if Trump testifies, I see no way Trump can testify except in some extreme circumstance, because he's going to open himself up to all sorts of withering cross-examination. So will Trump testify? The correct answer is not if he can help it. Not if he can help it. But, Trump he's a horrible client. So somebody posed one of the poll questions to me and said, would you take him as a client? Well, I'm not equipped to be a criminal defense lawyer for Donald Trump. But as a theoretical matter, I don't begrudge any lawyer who takes a case. We need lawyers. We all need lawyers. And I don't want to start making it referendum on the attorney based on who they represent. But I will tell you this, he'd be a handful. Because you can see, how he would sit there and second guess every litigation move that would be made and not in his own best interest. And then yesterday, gang, the Sunday poll question, 20,224 votes cast. Are college commencement addresses worth all the controversy? What's the deal, TC? 73.25% say no. Yeah. I say yes. Let it happen. Stop being so persnickety.
Well, I think that they're just responding to the protests and the current atmosphere. I don't think this is a historical thing. I think this is just the current atmosphere is so hot right now. I just got an email that Harvard Yard will be closed all week.
Harvard Yard?
The Yard is now closed till Friday because of what's going on in Columbia. They're doing virtual classes there. I mean, it's a mess. It is a mess out there on some of these campuses.
It is a mess, and the Columbia University president, Manu Shafik, issued at 1:14 a.m. on Monday her first statement to the Columbia community since authorizing the New York Police Department to sweep the Gaza Solidarity encampment, expressing that she is deeply saddened by what is happening on our campus. By the way, the coverage that we have in the newsletter today is from the Columbia Spectator. So if you want a very interesting take on this, in the same way, I'll get to USC in a moment, but I'm going to the Daily Trojan, and I'm going to the Columbia Spectator because I guess I would have to check the box if I were called for Trump jury duty on the Columbia Spectator too. But I want to know, what are they actually saying on campus? And gang, I want to say something else. If the college campuses are struggling to this extent relative to Israel, Gaza, and speech, all I keep thinking about is Chicago. All I keep thinking about is Chicago and the Democratic National Convention, Chicago, the scene of all that unrest in '68, Dan Rather, the floor of the delegates and so forth, all of those things. If you remember or have read or seen the film footage of it, it is Chicago where Democrats are having their convention, and you have to believe that the activists most passionate about the Palestinian cause, if they're showing up the way they're showing up at Columbia, and if Harvard needs to close the yard, they're going to come to Chicago too. So, today's poll question: is it cruel and unusual to criminally cite the homeless for public encampment if they have no access to shelter? Oh my God, Michael, why is that such a legalese mouthful? Well, because it is the issue. It is the issue being argued today in the Supreme Court of the United States. And where communities like Grants Pass, Oregon, have wanted to stop the encampment by the homeless in public spaces, the Ninth Circuit said, unless you have a bed for everyone, that is cruel and unusual. So that's the debate playing itself out in the Supreme Court today. I'm asking, is it cruel and unusual to criminally cite the homeless for public encampment if they have no access to shelter? TC, you were with me in Nashville.
I was.
When I had the privilege to interview one Peter Frampton.
I absolutely was, and he was as amazing in person as he is, as you would want him to be. I think that's the way I'm going to say it. He was just a gentleman and lovely and warm and everything, and I loved you two together. The chemistry was there. I think you've just thoroughly enjoyed each other, and that was a fantastic interview.
Totally loved being in his company. First, album that I ever bought was his double album, Frampton Comes Alive.
And why are we talking about it right now?
Because at long last, Peter Frampton will be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. By the way,
Yay!
I've never attended that.
Yeah, now you might have to.
Either Liberal Paul or Denny Somack or maybe Dave Gorab with the SiriusXM table. I've been invited. And the reason that I haven't done it is because I think it's like a 5 or 6 hour long evening because of all the set changes and so forth. But I'm interested in going to this. Like, I would like to see Peter Frampton inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That to me would be cool. And by the way, Mary J. Blige, Cher, Dave Matthews Band, Foreigner, Peter Frampton, Kool and the Gang, Ozzy Osbourne, and A Tribe Called Quest. I think that's a really strong class, and Frampton was second in balloting with the fan vote only to the Dave Matthews Band.
I was surprised that some of them weren't already in, as I was with
Of
Peter
course.
Frampton. So that stood out to me. So I agree with you. This is, as they call it, a master class.
Yeah, I think it sounds really exciting. Hey, do you have a piece of me with Peter?
I do. So this was you two talking about the final tour.
When rock gods tell us it's the final tour, we tend not to believe them. In your case, sadly, it might be true.
It is true. Unfortunately, it's not something I want to do, is to stop playing ever, because that's my passion. Unfortunately, I have inclusion body myositis, which is IBM, and it's a long. I've had it a long time. It's very slow moving, but it is a degenerative muscle disease. Possibly autoimmune, we're not sure, but Basically, it affects my legs muscles, they atrophy, and my arms and my hands. So it hasn't got to the point where it's affected my playing yet, but it's moving that way. And that's basically why I want to go out playing my best.
And I can tell you that after that interview, and he did do a final tour, he was still able to play. I saw him last year. In fact, I remember it was the day of that horrific storm, TC, where there was that flooding that took an infant not too far from. That's why it stands out in my mind.
Oh, how awful!
Because in that rain, I remember going to the concert with my son-in-law, as a matter of fact, who had never seen Peter Frampton before. I'm not sure at this moment. If he can still tour. I hope that he can. Fingers crossed that he can. But anyway, great news. Just great news. A really wonderful, like a good guy, gets the recognition that he so justly deserves. Mr. Peter Frampton in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. There's a lot more great headlines in the newsletter today. They're all posted at Smerconish.com. Please vote on the homeless poll question of the day. And thank you for listening and watching.